Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
It's our understanding that they went on throughout 2016. Weren't a lot of them, but there were conversations. Can't be sure of the exact dates, but the president can remember having conversations with him about it. Probably could be up to as far as October, November. Our answers cover until the election. So anytime during that period, they could have talked about it.
As far as the president was concerned, an active project to at least October or November of 2016, an active potential deal.
Yeah, I would say an active proposal.
Joining me now are two former federal prosecutors and MSNBC legal analysts, Cynthia Oxney and Glenn Kirshner. Big welcome to you both. Ladies first here, Cynthia. You just heard Giuliani confirm negotiations lasted until November of 2016, potentially. And as an MSNBC contributor, Natasha Bertrand points out, quote, if true, Trump was secretly trying to strike a deal with Moscow, even after the FBI warned him of the counterintelligence threat posed by Russia. Does this matter from a legal perspective at all?
Well, beside the fact that it matters because the president is a liar and that he was telling the American people he had no business dealings with Russia, and that he was briefed in August of 2016 by the FBI, which apparently he did not bother to tell them about this deal. It matters this way. It backs up the general impression that the president knew Cohen was going to lie, and he did nothing about it. If Cohen, when we know that Cohen went into the grand jury and he lied, that Cohen went into the Congress and he lied. Mm-hmm. When he did that, the president knew he was lying. That is a failure to faithfully execute the laws and will eventually come back around in any impeachment proceeding.
Interestingly, Glenn, Giuliani also says that Trump may have spoken to Cohen about his testimony beforehand, and this is something that Cynthia is just referring to. Let's take a listen to that.
You just acknowledged that it's possible that President Trump talked to Michael Cohen about his testimony.
Which would be perfectly normal.
So is this as innocent as Giuliani's making it appear? Shouldn't this be investigated on whether or not this is obstruction?
It certainly should, and I'm quite sure it is by Bob Mueller and company. I agree with Cynthia that all of this matters. The problem is it's all coming from an unreliable source. I mean, I heard Charlie Savage tell you, Alex, a few minutes ago, what Giuliani says has no value, because if you think about just the short history of Giuliani's statements, he said at first the president knew nothing about the Stormy Daniels payoff, and then he said he did know about the Stormy Daniels payoff. At first, his lawyers said he did not participate in drafting the false narrative about the Trump Tower meeting until the attorneys said he did participate in drafting that false narrative. Giuliani said he never told Comey to lay off Flynn until Giuliani said he did tell Comey to lay off Flynn. I mean, the assertions by Giuliani just can't be viewed as factual. And I know we're left to talk about them and pick and choose which one has sort of legal implications. But I think the bottom line is, we need to await Mueller's indictments and report before we can really kind of pull the curtain back on all of Giuliani's nonsensical claims.
Cynthia, Cohen set to testify February 7th before the House Oversight Committee. I'm curious your take on this hearing and how credible can we expect Cohen to be here when he has already lied? I mean, the fact of the matter is he says he's not doing anything to try to get a reduced sentence, but you've got to think that his attorneys are considering that, certainly, by what he might say, and as if he's an operating witness.
Right. Well, he's set to testify. I honestly think it's not a good idea. Now, from a I want to know everything that happened, and I'm going to admit that he testifies. I mean, I want to know. I want to hear. I'm dying to know. I'm sure I'll listen to every word of it. But from a prosecutor's point of view, you don't really want your witness in the House committee where, Jim looked the other way, Jordan is doing a cross-exam, and there's going to be, ugly yelling and screaming, and it's a weird setup. And what's happened then, even when he says, I can't talk about that or I can't talk about that, what's happened is that people like Jim Jordan are framing this case that really Mueller should be framing. And even if Mueller doesn't allow him to testify about certain things, it's going to devolve into a circus. And prosecutors, we're control freaks. We want to control the way the witness, maybe he's never going to be a witness because he's such a terrible witness, but the way the case is presented to the public or to the jury. And because of this testimony and the way it is, that's never going to happen. Let me just make one more comment about Giuliani. He said, what if he did talk to him? What's the big deal? Here's the big deal. Mueller was appointed in May of 2017. He testified in October of 2017. Cohen had no business discussing his testimony with the President of the United States at all, full stop. And I am sure that no competent lawyer would have allowed him to do that. That means they probably did an end run on the lawyers at the White House. And it is one more thing that's a consciousness of guilt piece of evidence.
Your take on all this? Do you agree with Cynthia, Glenn?
I do agree with Cynthia. And again, the problem becomes statements of attorneys are generally not admissible, and I use that term broadly, against the client. So all of the contradictory statements that Giuliani is making ultimately will probably never see the light of day inside a courtroom or an impeachment hearing, because it really is about what Trump says and what Mueller has found out about what Trump has said and done. So, we are going to have to wait on Bob Mueller.
It is Tuesday, the 22nd of January of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. And I have to tell you, the secret is just a pinch, less than a dash, a scant pinch of hot smoked Hungarian or Spanish paprika will make all the difference. Because, I gotta tell you, paprika is what drove civilization. And if you look at, I dare you to look it up. Okay. Well, got through another day, got a little sick to my stomach when I was out and about, and for obvious reasons, and that's a new one. And it's weird. I'll be okay out in public for a little bit, and then I don't want to be around people too much. I start getting sick to my stomach now. Wow. Okay. Well, I guess you can't prepare for everything in life. Okay? To all you Boy Scouts out there, I'm going to tell you, you'll learn. All right. So then compound that with waking up this morning and all the news that's coming down this morning. The battleships or destroyers, the naval vessels in the Baltic right now, the Black Sea. Starting to churn up the waters a bit there, and a little sword rattling, and I don't know. What's that all about? Because you couple that with Trump's deal with Deripaska, and I think maybe the deal to open up the government is that Deripaska gets paid first, And then you can pay the Coast Guard and the Border Patrol and all the park people and everybody else that, runs the government. And the government itself. Vlad said, you pay Deripaska first. When that happens, then I'll just say I told you so. Oh, yeah. And Charlie Kirk. Oh, my God. What a schmuck he is. My God. They take him to Cedars-Sinai, they being a friend. Apparently he has, they're saying a blood clot because his back went out. I've heard that one before. But I guess when they did the triage, they determined it wasn't that severe, and he's going to have to wait. Oh, is he whining? He's whining. Oh, my God. Well, you know what? You were getting the kind of health care that really you fought so hard for. So they're making you sit on a bench out in the parking lot. Maybe they recognized him. Boy, that would say something, wouldn't it? Anyway, karma is karma. And Charlie Kirk, you little schmuck, you're getting the health care that you fought for. Hey, happy now? Yeah. Gaslighting continues on the MAGA hat Lord of the Flies lynch mob in D.C. The kids from Kentucky. No, I put this out on social media, but even the Atlantic, David told the story of the Atlantic today, basically saying there were some very fine people wearing MAGA hats. Well, one thing I noticed is that if you look at the MAGA hat, kind of like a hoodie, I mean, isn't a hoodie supposed to be, that determines your view on life, and you must be up to no good. And now we're not supposed to assign some sort of symbolic meaning to the MAGA hat, because then that would make us prejudiced. Yeah, I know. All right. Give me a break. The difference between the hoodie and the MAGA hat is that really the hoodie crosses all cultural, societal, and class divisions. But the MAGA hat is one subset, almost kind of like Crips, Bloods, and KKK. When I see a kid wearing a MAGA hat, I got to tell you, they hulk up to frightening proportions. You should fear them. Of course, on the other hand, I'll get to the point I was trying to make here about the idea that a bunch of white kids bust from Kentucky to D.C. to harass a bunch of women on religious grounds. Because, you're going to be a handmaiden, whether you like it or not. So the idea that they would be bussed in, given MAGA hats by their chaperones, to harass women over a right to choose, because it's religious, who then were confronted by 4 black kids who were wearing hoodies, I should say. And 4 black kids, they hulk up. You've seen it before. You've seen it a lot before. And that got pretty scary. So the white kids had to amass more than 70 people in a lynch mob. That was a lynch mob. Are we clear about that? And the tribal elder put himself in the middle of that because he's a Vietnam vet. He's a tribal elder. He's seen the devastation and inhumanity that men can perpetuate upon other people. And he's a tribal elder. And he walked in there to defuse the situation according to his idea of his religion. In the people's city, by the way. So the idea that those kids bust from Kentucky to harass and get in women's faces, who then were confronted by 4 black kids, who then amassed a 70-plus person lynch mob, and then mocked the tribal elder who tried to defuse the situation, that they are not bigots. It's ludicrous on its face. This is gaslighting people. Yeah, I've seen a lot of videos of that day. And let me put it in more clear terms. Kids wearing MAGA hats. They were either Crips, Bloods, or the KKK. Well, what's on the rest of the menu here? I mean, there's so much more going on in the world, and we'll get to it. Well, I'll remember something in the midst of it, and we'll put it in. Well, in the rest of the Bistro Cafe, of course, that was a federal prosecutor worrying that, and sometimes I'm a little too clever by half, so excuse me, but worries that Gym Dandy Lyin Jordan will turn the Cohen House Oversight hearing into a circus to protect Trump. Gym Dandy Lyin Jordan. Okay, I wrestled with that for a while, okay? Just so you know. I'll be here all week. On the rest of the menu, in the Bistro Cafe, a Nigerian politician banned from the U.S. for corruption spent last Thursday night at Trump's D.C. hotel after paying over $1 million to a GOP White House lobbying firm. He felt right at home, too. The Russian pop star at the heart of Trump's Moscow Tower scandal canceled his U.S. tour for fear he'll be detained in the Russia probe. And here I thought it was because he couldn't get anybody to buy tickets. And the U.S. will seek to formally extradite Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou from Canada. Let the fireworks begin. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where it does not matter if Buzzfeed got it wrong. Encouraging perjury is also a crime. And the CIA technical operations officer who helped rescue 6 diplomats from Iran and was portrayed in the film Argo by Ben Affleck, well, he has died at the age of 78. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. The chat room link is on the rightish of the page, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the page, at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will locate the contribute button. And if you could become a recurring Patreon to Netroots Radio, your resistance contribution keeps Resistance Radio resisting as the original founders originally intended. So thank you to those who have been so generous to help us do this. All kidding aside, we are unable to do this without you. So thank you so much. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, we can be found at Netroots Radio on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, where I can also be found as Justice Putnam. Once again, the show notes and links diary is an integral part to this multimedia concern. All right. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts. And they come, around noonish, a little bit after noon on the West Coast. That would be 3 p.m. on the East. So look for those by way of Stitcher, Spreaker, TuneIn, iTunes, YouTube, iHeart, and wherever fine podcasts can be found. A little show note that I should mention very quickly here. In February, I will be going to... I don't know if it's so much a surprise anymore, But friends and family are heading to Southern California for my father's 90th birthday. So the radio right now, we're trying to figure out how we're gonna get regular programming mostly playing, but it may turn out somewhat how it was when I had to leave the station very quickly when my son passed, and we weren't able to get everything in place the way I wanted it to. But we may have to have a modification of that. We're a little understaffed, and people have to go work and make money to feed their families and pay their mortgage. I don't think they're government workers, so they can do that. But so just giving you a little bit of a heads up, we may have a modified Netroots radio schedule, but rest assured you won't miss K-Girl in the morning, and the other pretty much normal live feeds. Those will still happen too. So thank you for your patience and all that. As we get closer to the date, I'll fill you in. All right, so let's get started here on this first article, which is out of Raw Story. Oh, here we go. Yeah, Raw Story always lags now. By Bob Brigham. The former vice president of Nigeria was allowed entry into the U.S. after paying $1.1 million to a lobbying firm linked to the White House. George W. Bush signed the Presidential Proclamation 7750 in 2004, which banned entry into the United States for people, quote, engaged in or benefiting from corruption. Well, if that's the case, how did Trump get here? Oh, you think he was born here? Do we know that for sure? Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, who is running for president in the February 16th election in Nigeria, has not been able to visit the United States for 12 years. But on last Thursday, Abubakar checked into Donald Trump's Washington, D.C. hotel. A bipartisan Senate report said that from 2000 to 2008, his wife helped him bring $40 million in suspect funds, including at least $1.7 million in bribes, into the United States. Well, that's stupid. You're supposed to go through Wilbur's Cypriot Bank first. Abubakar is no longer banned from the U.S. Republican lobbyist Brian Ballard, who is close to the Trump White House, signed a $1.1 million per year contract to represent Abubakar's political party, the People's Democratic Party. Sure it is. Well, former Principal Deputy Press Secretary Raj Shah, Baghdad Raj, joined Ballard's firm last week. Raj Shah is now no longer just the back channel for the bribes? I'm shocked. Shocked. Chapman of Alternet brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Well, yesterday NBC News reported that Emin Agalarov, a Russian pop star linked to Donald Trump, announced he is canceling his North American tour, citing his lawyer's fears that he could be held as a material witness in special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation of links between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. Scott Balber, Agalarov's attorney, has said that his client is happy to speak to Mueller and to Congress on a voluntary basis, but given that no agreement has been reached yet, the singer is unwilling to be subpoenaed or held under a material witness warrant or anything else, especially since his North American tour has not sold any tickets, I presume. Come on. Oh, well, maybe some tickets as tribute from a few adoring fans, or I don't know, what do you call them, capos? Emin Agalarov, who has featured Trump in multiple music videos, is the son of Eres Agalarov, a prominent business partner of Trump in Russia. The younger Agalarov helped arrange the 2016 Trump Tower meeting between Kremlin-linked Russian lawyer Natalia Veselenskaya and Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, and imprisoned former campaign manager Paul Manafort. The Agalarovs also were part of a proposal to build a Trump Tower in Moscow, which Trump pursued even during the 2016 election. Trump's former personal fixer, kind of like a lawyer, but really a fixer, Michael Cohen, lied to Congress about this deal, raising serious questions about what they were trying to hide. Of writers at Reuters. That's what a group of writers at Reuters is called, a slew. A slew of writers at Reuters have composed this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Well, the U.S. will proceed with the formal extradition from Canada of Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou. Canada's ambassador to the U.S. told the Globe and Mail, as Beijing vowed to respond to Washington's actions. I wonder what they mean by that. David McNaughton, in an interview with the Canadian newspaper published on Monday, said the U.S. has told Canada it will request Meng's extradition, but he did not say when the request will be made, and the deadline for filing is January 30th, or 60 days after Meng was arrested on December 1st in Vancouver. Meng, the daughter of Huawei Technologies company founder Ren Zhangfei, was arrested at the request of the U.S. over alleged violations of U.S. sanctions on Iran. Oh, I forgot. Deripaska has to get paid first. And part of that is making sure that we take Iran's money. You know, it's their money. I keep telling everybody. Well, she was released on bail last month and is due in court in Vancouver on February 6th. Relations between China and Canada turned frosty after the arrest, with China detaining 2 Canadian citizens and sentencing to death a Canadian man previously found guilty of drug smuggling. Oh yeah, convenient. Beijing has not tied any of the 3 Canadians' cases to Meng's arrest, but has warned of severe consequences if she was not immediately released. How inscrutable. Western and former Canadian diplomats have said they have no doubt the cases are linked. Well, like I said, how inscrutable. Huawei, the world's biggest maker of telecommunications equipment, said it had no comment on ongoing legal proceedings when contacted by Reuters on Tuesday. A U.S. Justice Department spokesman said, "We will comment through our filings." Oh, really? And then knowing the Trump aspect of it, they'll probably leak a few here and there for political effect, because this is what this all is all about. Trump thinks that he's rattling some sabers here with his tariff and trade war with China. And China says, do you think that we've never had a trade war before? You don't think that we've never experienced that ever in our history? And Trump wouldn't know. I mean, seriously and literally, he would not know because he never bothered to learn or even care about any of Chinese history. Really. All right, let's get to our break. And when we come back from that break, of course, we're going to go through weather from around the world and the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Trump the prequel. There's a theory that explains the current presidency is not an aberration, but a culmination. After all, according to PolitiFact, the presidential candidate who told the most lies before Trump was Romney, and before that, McCain. There's a trend. The movie Vice goes back to the days of Bush and Cheney, or more accurately, as the film notes, Cheney and Bush. There's not a lot here that we didn't know. Their administration was a time of rampant corruption and a pernicious exploration of constitutional and statute law for workarounds to advance fringe ideologies and personal agendas. But seeing it played out on a screen in the current context is potent and begs some obvious questions. As a cinematic effort, Vice has it going on. Amy Adams portrays the force of nature that remains wife Lynn, Sam Rockwell has the clueless George W. down, and a 40 extra pound Christian Bale's Dick Cheney is one for the ages. Now, any exploration of an alpha male anti-hero is, of course, going to examine family relationships, and the way Cheney ends up dealing with the issue of his out-gay daughter is perhaps as revealing as anything you'll ever learn about this man. Director Adam McKay gives the subject matter here a treatment similar to that in his The Big Short from 2015, and then some. In this one, you'll be addressed directly. Here's some interesting menu items in a restaurant scene. Be treated to a bedroom interpretation of Macbeth, and that's before you discover the identity of the mystery narrator. A valid question is whether Cheney and Company's treatment in Vice is too light, given their ongoing potential exposure to war crimes charges. You'll have to decide whether the comedy here is black enough to suit, and for that contemporary connection, make sure you stay through the credits. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Leonardo da Vinci's most famous painting also has an optical illusion named for it, the Mona Lisa effect. It's the feeling that the subject of a painting is following you with her gaze.
You continuously feel being looked at, despite moving to the left or moving to the right, perhaps even rotating the picture.
Sebastian Loth is a psychologist at the University of Bielefeld in Germany, and while he doesn't dispute that the illusion itself exists, you've probably also seen it in the Uncle Sam Army recruitment poster, he says there's a problem with the phenomenon's name.
I can show you so many papers where people have literally started their introduction with, we all know that Mona Lisa looks at you, and so on and so forth, and then they would go into their argument, whatever it is. But actually, the specific picture doesn't look at you.
He and his colleague Gernot Horstmann conducted a scientific investigation of this claim by sitting 24 volunteers in front of a computer screen which displayed various magnifications of the Mona Lisa. They placed rulers at two distances between the subjects and the screen, and then asked the subjects to indicate where on the rulers the Mona Lisa's gaze intersected.
And then you can compute a line, that's basically school mathematics here, and then you can figure out the angle. What came out was 15 degrees to the right.
So the Mona Lisa actually stares over the viewer's right shoulder, he says, not straight out of the canvas, the key to creating her namesake illusion. The write-up is in the journal Eye Perception. Loth says effects like these can have modern implications too. For example, when building virtual assistants on computers, which might need to speak to and make eye contact with more than one person in a room. As for Da Vinci's masterpiece, there's still another illusion that remains. The mysterious ambiguity of the Mona Lisa's smile.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Heart disease and stroke can be catastrophic. They're leading causes of death, disability, and healthcare spending in the U.S., yet they're largely preventable. Alarmingly, heart disease and stroke are taking a toll on middle-aged adults 35 to 64, with over 800,000 deaths and hospitalizations in 2016. Million Hearts is a national initiative focused on preventing 1 million heart attacks, strokes, and other cardiovascular events by 2022. Coordinated actions by Million Hearts partners in communities, healthcare, and public health will keep people healthy, optimize care, and improve outcomes in populations at risk. Everyone has a part to play. Focus on the ABCs of heart health. A. Aspirin use when appropriate. B. Blood pressure control. C. Cholesterol management. And S. Smoking cessation. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/vital signs. For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO. This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
In 2017, approximately 1 in 6 high school students reported a sports or physical activity-related concussion. Immediate symptoms of a concussion include headache, nausea, and double vision. Long-term, the effects of such injuries, particularly those that are more severe, can be life-changing. Healthcare providers, coaches, trainers, and parents should be aware of the symptoms of a concussion and how to treat them. A concussion protocol should be developed that includes withholding an athlete from practice and competition until all symptoms are resolved. While concussions cannot always be prevented, they can be treated in a way that decreases the chances of long-term health problems. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
It's been pointed out that Donald Trump has unusually small hands. But who cares? What's truly alarming are his unusually small policy ideas. Draining the swamp, for example. He bragged that he'd be stronger than Drano, promising he'd rid Washington of its infestation with lobbyists, corporate favor seekers, and other swamp critters. But he betrayed that populist pledge from the very start, staffing his entire presidency with CEOs, lobbyists, and Republican megadonors who are gleefully rigging the system for themselves against the rest of us. Also, remember how candidate Trump blistered the behinds of Wall Street's billionaire hedge fund hucksters for getting rich by destroying middle-class jobs? He promised that, by gollies, he would take away their loophole that lets them escape paying taxes they owe. But as president, he wimped out, handing $1 trillion tax cut to the billionaires, including meekly leaving the pampered hedge funders' loophole entirely untouched. And where's that Make America Great guy who claimed that only he had the vision and chutzpah to rebuild America, pledging to launch $1 trillion investment in our national infrastructure? His chutzpah petered out and his vision shriveled to a hokey scheme of smoke and mirrors, basically asking states and corporations to come up with the money and calling on them to privatize our public infrastructure. Where's the greatness in that? This is Jim Hightower saying, poor Donnie wants to be thought of as a modern-day Teddy Roosevelt, so he constantly poses as a populist, bigger-than-life bull moose character who's got the right stuff to bust the profiteering trusts in order to stop their rip-offs and their schemes to knock down the middle class. Sadly, though, a pose is all it is, for he's just a run-of-the-mill plutocratic president who speaks loudly but carries nothing bigger than a limp twig when it comes to dealing with the corporate powers.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Tuesday marks the 32nd day of the longest government shutdown in history. It's also the 2-year anniversary of Trump being sworn in as the nation's 45th president. On Saturday, the president presented Democrats with an option other than give me my wall or we kill the country, offering a 3-year temporary extension for DACA and another 3-year reprieve on temporary protective status or TPS for some immigrants from Latin America and African countries, if Congress also goes along with $5.7 billion in new funding for the wall. The Trump administration is simultaneously challenging those immigrant protection programs in court. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says there will be a vote in the Senate this week where the GOP proposal will need support from at least 7 Democrats to reach the 60-vote threshold for passage in the upper chamber. I think this is a good time to get in the Wayback Machine to hear what Mitch McConnell was saying just a month ago.
That's why we'll soon take up a simple measure that will continue government funding into February so we can continue this vital debate after the new Congress has convened.
Now, with the Democrats controlling the House, the turtle is singing a different song. He's giving up the Senate's power to override a presidential veto by proclaiming he won't even bring a bill to the floor without Trump's pre-assurances that he'll sign it. While a few Democrats could join Republicans in supporting the bill, it's unlikely the measure will get the necessary 60 votes. Regardless, this so-called deal appears to be dead on arrival in the House, where Pelosi this week plans to move ahead with another round of votes on smaller funding bills that have no additional money for a border wall. McConnell has repeatedly blocked those bills from getting a vote in the Senate. For some reason, the White House keeps putting Rudy Giuliani out front for interviews. Be careful. Watching him could give you whiplash, CNN explains.
President Trump's attorney Rudy Giuliani doing damage control today over his own media blitz. After first admitting the president had conversations about a Trump Tower Moscow deal all the way through the 2016 election.
Could be up to as far as October, November. Our answers cover until the election. So anytime during that period, they could have talked about it.
Giuliani now tells CNN President Trump has no recollection of discussions as late as Election Day. Trump couldn't know the exact date the talks ended, Giuliani claims, because there's no record of the negotiations. But just yesterday, Giuliani said Trump has acknowledged discussing the Moscow project with his former personal attorney, Michael Cohen, during the election.
He acknowledged that they had conversations about it throughout 2015, 2016.
Giuliani even telling the New York Times that Trump told him the discussions were, quote, going on from the day I announced to the day I won. Giuliani's comments flying in the face of Trump's claims ever since he was campaigning.
I have nothing to do with Russia. I have nothing to do with Russia.
The new timeline of discussions revealing how Trump's business dealings with Russia coincided with his foreign policy proclamations on the campaign trail.
The holiday weekend saw the number of declared 2020 Democratic presidential candidates expand. Joining Elizabeth Warren and Kirsten Gillibrand comes a third female senator vying for the Democratic nomination, Kamala Harris.
I am running for president of the United States.
Well,
and I'm very excited about it. This is a moment in time that I feel a sense of responsibility to stand up and fight for the best of who we are.
Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii had already thrown her hat in the ring, but on Sunday displayed why so many question her progressive cred, telling CNN's Jake Tapper that both sides are responsible for the Trump shutdown.
I think there are a whole host of issues that need to be addressed, but they cannot be addressed so long as both sides are not willing to come together and have a real conversation and hash out the differences and come up with something that works best for the American people.
It's interesting, though, because you sound like you're not just blaming President Trump on this. You're also blaming Democratic leaders in Congress.
Both sides have completely hardened their positions and are unwilling to come together and work out the differences, and that's the problem here.
Bernie Sanders, who still hasn't announced whether or not he'll run, was in South Carolina for Martin Luther King Day and continues to speak plain English.
Today we talk about justice, and today we talk about racism. And I must tell you, it gives me no pleasure to tell you that we now have a president of the United States who is a racist.
Hakeem Jeffries, chair of the House Democratic Caucus, used an MLK holiday speech at the National Action Network to criticize the president's racist record.
These are challenging times in the United States of America. We have a hater in the White House. A birther-in-chief, the Grand Wizard of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. One of the things that we've learned is that while Jim Crow may be dead, he's still got some nieces and nephews that are alive and well. So one of the things that we need to do is learn from the lessons of Dr. King and how he dealt with such hate.
A new report from anti-poverty nonprofit Oxfam found that last year, just 26 people owned the same amount of wealth as the poorest 3.8 billion people. This figure is down from 43 the year before. And that's a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
From New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. The Chinese government said Monday the country's birth rate had hit an all-time low in 2018 with just 10.9 births per 1,000 people. That's down 10% from a decade ago and down a third from 1999. Barry Naughton is a professor of the Chinese economy at the University of California, San Diego.
This is important. This is the first year where we really get to see how Chinese families are responding to the fact that they're not under pressure to limit their births.
China announced an end to its infamous one-child policy 3 years ago, but it's taken time to be officially rolled back and for people to make family planning decisions as a result.
The fact that not only do we not have a surge of births, but we actually have a decline, it's really very important for the long-term evolution of China.
Planners in Beijing are watching the demographics closely since a drop in new births now will mean a smaller workforce in the years ahead.
Not today, but in about 15 years, the drop in the labor market is going to be pretty steep. And they're worried about that because they think correctly that a slow reduction in size of the birth rate is no big deal. But if it drops relatively sharply, it could be disruptive to the development path that the economy is on.
Yet having handed citizens the chance to choose their ideal family size, Naughton says Beijing will struggle to use either coercion or incentives to distract from the country's competitive academic landscape, crowded job market, or soaring real estate prices, each of which is currently driving families to funnel resources toward a single child.
But the one thing we can say is these things do change. It may well be that 5 or 10 years from now, Chinese families will start to decide, oh, this is actually the most precious thing, to have a larger family. So behavior can still change, but I don't think the government can make the behavior change.
Luke Vargas, New York.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A little bit of hot smoked Hungarian or Spanish paprika makes all the difference in the world. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 33 degrees. It even feels like 33 degrees, and that's important. Winds are light and variable out of the south. Our temperature and forecast looks to be nearly the same as yesterday. Highs in the upper 40s, low 50s. The nights are going to be a bit chilly, though. They did dip down below the low 40s into the mid 30s. So we will be having actually probably low to mid 30s in overnight lows. Winds will remain light and variable out of the south. And tomorrow, we are expecting to get about a quarter inch of rain from a spate of showers coming our way. Pollen is rated none. Air quality index is ticked up ever so high into the moderate range at 51 parts per million. And the daytime UV index is rated low at 2. Barometric pressure here in the Rogue River Valley is falling at 30.29 inches. Visibility is at 8 miles. And relative humidity is at 89%. Wow. All right, weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 41 and partly cloudy. Paris is 35 degrees Fahrenheit with mist and a weather advisory. And what is that weather advisory? Oh, they're not going to tell me because the page cannot be found. Well, be that way. I'll have to go back to where we were. Let's see. And yes, it looks like Rome is 44 and cloudy. Kiev is 21 degrees with light snow. Kabul is 19 degrees and fair. Hong Kong is 54 degrees and clear. Tokyo is 38 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia, in their summer, is 74 and clear, well, almost summer. And San Francisco, California, is 47 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York, is 20 degrees Fahrenheit, a crisp 20 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And it looks like your lows are going to be down into the low aughts. Yes, indeed. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Ryan Goodman of Just Security brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Now assume that Buzzfeed got it wrong and that Trump did not direct Michael Cohen to lie to Congress. As a matter of law, what would result if Trump instead only encouraged Cohen to lie? There's evidence in the public record that at least points toward a conclusion that's exactly what Trump did. Evidence that principally includes court documents filed by Cohen's attorneys and the special counsel. Now, Goodman asked several leading experts to analyze the question. Their views are remarkably uniform. If Trump encouraged rather than directed Cohen to lie to Congress, Trump would still be guilty of a federal crime involving an obstruction of justice. The experts provide a range of insights about the kinds of evidence that would be needed to prove that Trump encouraged Cohen and about the inferences that can be drawn from the relationship between the two men at the time, the president's having a conversation with Cohen about his testimony in advance, and other matters. What, if any, legal significance is there between the following two scenarios? A. President Trump directed Cohen to lie to Congress. B. Trump knew in advance that Michael Cohen was going to lie to Congress, and Trump gave Cohen his approval or encouragement. At the time, Cohen was Trump's personal lawyer. Another way of putting the question, if scenario B were true, would Trump be potentially guilty of a crime? The same crime as scenario A. So we asked these various legal experts a series of other questions that you should look at because they're quite comprehensive, and the opinions from each of these legal experts are also quite uniform, as stated by Goodman, but also very deep and exhaustive as well. So do go to the show notes and links diary at Daily Kos and peruse each of these legal opinions, and there's a score of them.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
An anonymous worker bee at the Associated Press by way of the LA Times brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A former CIA technical operations officer who helped rescue 6 U.S. diplomats from Iran in 1980 and was portrayed by Ben Affleck in the Academy Award-winning film Argo has died at the age of 78. His family, in a statement, and his literary agent confirmed that Antonio Tony Mendez died Saturday at an assisted living center in Frederick, Maryland. He had suffered from Parkinson's, according to the statement. Specializing in covert operations, Mendez helped devise the plan under which 6 diplomats who were in hiding were disguised as a Canadian film crew so they could board a flight and escape the country amid the Iranian hostage crisis. The daring plot, for years a side note to the 52 people held hostage for 444 days, captured the public's attention in Argo, which won the 2013 Oscar for Best Picture. Mendez, who joined the CIA after being recruited in 1965, spent his 25-year career working undercover in Cold War battlegrounds, including the Soviet Union. Working as a chief of disguise, Mendez and his workers helped secret agents remain secret through disguises and false documents. Tony Mendez was a true American hero. He was a man of extraordinary grace, decency, humility, and kindness, Affleck said Saturday. He never sought the spotlight for himself, for his actions. He just merely sought to serve his country. I'm so proud to have worked for him and to have told one of his stories. The Argo screenplay, based on Mendez's memoir and also an Oscar winner, was liberally embellished for the big screen, to put it mildly. The 6 Americans' passage through the Tehran airport and onto a plane was uneventful, but the movie portrayed it as a white-knuckle takeoff at the Tehran airport, with Iranian assault teams racing behind the jet down the runway, and if it was done today, they'd be right at the border. Gotta have the wall. Born in Eureka, Nevada, Mendez moved to Colorado when he was 14, attended the University of Colorado, and worked for Martin Marietta on the Titan intercontinental missile, and he was recruited for the CIA in Denver through a blind ad. And his wife, Jonah, is also a former chief of disguise at the CIA's Office of Technical Services. The two wrote the book Spy Dust, about their agency work in Moscow in the final days of the Cold War and their romance, which led to their marriage after he retired in 1990. Mendez was also an accomplished painter. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you know that Netroots Radio is going to be broadcasting on. We'll meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays, and boy, do we need to. And so do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Cohen. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.